In this video, we're going to talk about 3 things that can really help when we evangelize. The very first thing that I want to talk about in this video is why we should reason with the people that we evangelize to. When we read about Paul in the book of Acts, we can read about how he evangelizes. So when Paul would go out and evangelize, one thing that he would be focusing on was to reason with those who he talked to. He would try to persuade them through reasoning. So an example of that would be Acts 17, 2-3, and it says, "And Paul went in, as was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and proving that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead, and saying, 'This Jesus whom I proclaim to you is the Christ.'" So notice here how Paul doesn't just go up to someone and just say, "Jesus loves you." No, Paul would actually reason with people to persuade them that Jesus was the Christ, that he was the Messiah that the Jews have been waiting for. And he would show especially the Jews in their scriptures the truth about Jesus. But as Paul would reason with people, that takes us to point number 2, which is we should do it with love. Paul would make sure that when he went out there, he would go out there in truth and love. He would always speak the truth, and he would always go out there with love. He would persuade people about judgment, sin, and righteousness. And then of course we have this Bible verse which we have been talking so much about on this channel. This is one of the most important Bible verses when it comes to apologetics. It is, "But in your hearts honor Christ, the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you." But what does he say? He says, "Yet do it with gentleness and respect." Do it with love. When we go out there, we should reason with people. We should try to persuade them, right? And we should try to persuade them with love. That's point number 2, love. So point number 3 is about when someone asks a question you cannot answer. So I want to say 2 things about that. I want to say number 1 is that it's never wrong to say, "I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Let me look it up." If you're trying to evangelize to a friend, I would just say use AI. Use AI to figure out the answer with your friend, Say you're on the streets and someone says, "The Bible just have too many contradictions in them." A great way to answer that is actually not to answer their objection. A great way to answer in this scenario could just be to say, "Does that prove that God does not exist?" So you go on the streets, and people say, "There's too many contradictions in the Bible, it's not real." And then you say, "Well, I would say I disagree with you, but does that prove that God does not exist?" Because here's the thing. Now, there are no contradictions in the Bible, but even if there would be contradictions in the Bible, that does not prove that God does not exist. So sometimes it's not about answering their question, but rather relaying it onto something else that can help you in your conversation. So in this scenario, it can be helpful to just ask, "Does that prove that God does not exist?" I think sometimes through our pride, we can want to have to answer their questions. But again, there's nothing wrong about saying, "I don't know." And there's so many scenarios where you can just say, "Does that prove that God does not exist?" Because remember the builder scenario, just like this building I am in needed a builder, in the same way this universe we are in needs a creator. If there wouldn't be a builder for this building would never exist. If there never would be a creator for this universe would never exist. So remember that as you go evangelize. So we want to reason with people. We want to reason with people God's existence. We want to reason with people about sin, righteousness, and judgment. We want to reason and persuade people so that they will come to Christ, but with love. Love is so important. With that, live bold, speak truth, show love.
Oh, hey. So we brought you to this side of the camera because we're looking for leaders. We created this 12-week study guide for leaders, and this is the handbook. So you'll notice in our YouTube series, we have our first 12 videos are just the basics of apologetics. And we created this handbook to go with them. So we want small groups to know about this and for leaders to stand up and teach apologetics to them. So we created this for the leaders, and we want to share this resource with you. So if you're interested in leading a small group through evangelism and apologetics training, reach out to us and we will be happy to supply you with one of these. And then the videos are all free on YouTube. Feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you about apologetics and evangelism.